Okay, so we have to talk about Thebausffs. He gets away with randomly feeding his enemies kills for free while still being the undisputed best Sion player in the world. To the untrained eye, all he does is int during the early game, but his strategy is actually genius. In fact, he gets a massive advantage out of his deaths, ultimately turning him into a true late-game monster. He consistently outscales his enemies despite, or rather because, he is dying to them in lane. The strategy I'm going to show you is extremely rewarding but quite difficult to pull off, so please pay close attention. However, there is something you can do right now to increase your win rate guaranteed. If you're watching my live streams on Twitch, you will notice that there are some extras on my screen. This is because I'm using the Mobalytics desktop app, who are the sponsor of today's video. With this app, you get valuable real-time information about your games, which you can use to your advantage. The two features I like the most are these jungle timers on the minimap telling you exactly when which camp will respawn. This is crucial for your rotations and also for tracking the enemy jungler, but my favorite feature is actually the summoner spell tracker right here. When you're in a fight and the enemy had to use their summoner spells, all you need to do is click the icons on the overlay and the app will track the remaining cooldowns for you. This way you know exactly when the spells will be back up, so you can take full advantage of the opponent's lack of options. A play like this would be rather shaky when you don't know which enemy has their cooldowns ready, but when you can target anyone who doesn't have their flash, your performance will be much more consistent. Download the Mobalytics app with my link in the video description to get access to these tools yourself while also supporting my channel at the same time. But back to topic. The first big reason of Thebausffs' success are his unique rune and item choices. He essentially takes all of the best scaling runes he can get in order to guarantee that his late game will be phenomenal, even if his early game plan would get ruined. The exact rune page is Phase Rush, Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm, with Demolish and Conditioning secondary. Believe it or not, but Phase Rush is actually the hardest scaling rune on this entire page, and the reason is of course Sion's passive. Due to Thebausffs' special item builds taking full advantage of Zombie Sion's fixed attack speed, all he needs is the movement speed from Phase Rush to stick to his victims and destroy them in Sion's passive form. Getting out-kited is a huge problem for melee champions in general, but Phase Rush fixes this issue perfectly. Absolute Focus on the one hand, but especially Gathering Storm on the other hand, further boosts the DPS of Zombie Sion in the late game, who is a true auto-attack machine. However, Sion's two most important damage-dealing abilities, namely his Q and his ultimate, also come with impressive AD ratios. The runes on the Resolve path, however, are chosen because of Sion's W. W's passive causes Sion to permanently gain bonus health whenever he kills a unit, and since Thebausffs' strategy heavily focuses on power farming, as you're about to see, this stacking health passive will generate a lot of value. The effectiveness of all the bonus health gets multiplied by the bonus resistances from conditioning. Therefore, this rune page in combination with Sion's unique traits turns him into a ridiculously powerful damage dealer in the late game, while also making him very hard to take down. But the rune that is most crucial to Thebausffs' playstyle is still Demolish. Again, Sion stacks tons of health with his W, and Demolish deals bonus physical damage to towers based on your own HP stat. Split pushing and tower taking is Thebausffs' main way of contributing to the game, and especially with his item build, the value he gets from Demolish is absolutely crazy. As I've mentioned, Demolish deals physical damage. This is important because lethality works against towers as well, and as you can see, Thebausffs goes all in on lethality with his unique Sion item build. The lethality coming from his core items of Prowler's Claw and Ghostblade, in combination with the health from Sion's W and the interactions with Demolish, creates the perfect setup for a super effective split pushing strategy. But there is more to unpack here. Of course, all these items also provide attack damage, further feeding into Sion's passive with its fixed 1.75 auto attacks per second. Additionally, Sion actually deals bonus on hit damage with his auto attacks while in his passive zombie form, and this bonus damage also benefits from lethality because it is physical damage as well. All of these synergistic interactions would naturally come with any lethality items, but there is a very good reason why Thebausffs chooses to buy Prowler's Claw and Ghostblade specifically. Once more, Sion, especially in his passive form, is highly prone to getting out-kited. If your enemies run away from you, your passive would be completely useless. However, Sion can still use active effects from items in his passive, and both Prowler's Claw and Ghostblade do have active effects providing additional mobility. The dash from Prowlers and the movement speed from Ghostblade make it much easier to stick to your target and trigger Phase Rush, which usually seals their fate. Quick side note, Thebausffs will probably adjust the build a little bit with the new lethality item update, since Prowler's Claw will lose its dash, making it less valuable. My bet would be that he then rushes the new mythic Ghostblade, but we will see. And since mobility is super important not only for chasing people in your passive, but also for out-rotating enemies while split pushing, Thebausffs also takes Boots of Swiftness. His late game items are designed to maximize his DPS and passive form, getting % armor penetration with Mortar Reminder, to then round out his build with IE and Collector for the deadliest crits imaginable. At this stage, Sion can kill any target, while the enemy literally cannot even make a move. But before we now explore how his inting strategy actually works, you should keep in mind that if you want to have educational league content like this in your personal feed, all you need to do is click the subscribe button. Thebausffs plays Sion with this strategy in both top and mid lane, and in this game he is facing a mid lane Aurelion Sol. Of course, he immediately runs into the problems that come with playing a melee champion against a ranged champion, but look how he resolves the issue. Yes, his solution is literally to just die. But except for the kill gold, Aurelion Sol doesn't get anything out of this, because Thebausffs still farms the entire wave in his passive. As a consequence, he is back in lane before Aurelion even had the chance to base himself, creating a valuable tempo advantage for Thebausffs. Again, he values minions and towers more than anything else in this game, and now he gets to farm an extra wave for free while Aurelion has to reset. Anyway, as the lane phase continues, Thebausffs takes a bunch of free damage, including a tower shot, for apparently no reason at all. However, he is doing something very crucial with this. He is setting up his next strategic death. On purpose. He is getting himself and the wave low at the same time, so he can die and get all the last hits in his passive form. Yes, he is gifting Aurelion another kill, but in exchange he himself gets a flawless back timing without losing any resources. And not only that, Thebausffs is also actively manipulating the bounty system with these moves, as you're about to see. But first things first, the immediate value from this death is again a tempo advantage, as Thebausffs is already back in lane with full health and freshly bought items, while Aurelion is struggling to find a back timing himself. It is exactly these tempo advantages that allow Thebausffs to consistently hit 10 CS per minute, or even more than that, in all of his games. At this point, Aurelion is already worth a shutdown, and Thebausffs tries to claim it, but barely doesn't get his slow off to kill him in his passive, causing Aurelion to survive. But it doesn't even matter. Despite this minor mistake and Aurelion's lucky escapes, all this tempo advantage accumulates into a massive CS lead and free gold from tower platings for Sion. Aurelion just cannot farm because he cannot keep up in terms of recall timings. And remember, those 10 CS per minute don't merely provide gold, but directly feed into Sion's W, setting him up for an incredible late game. At this point, Thebausffs is shamelessly proxying the wave, maximizing his farm advantage. He then deliberately sticks around with low health again, so he can, you guessed it, plan his next death. Since Sion is 0-4 at this point, Aurelion doesn't even get much gold anymore from killing him. Meanwhile, Sion keeps collecting free resources in lane, and there is nothing the enemy can do about it. Thebausffs is at 10 CS per minute, and this is all that matters. At this point, he also just keeps going for Aurelion's shutdown gold, which is still a win-win situation. He either gets it right away and starts to solo carry the game from there, or the enemy gets lucky again, which only delays the inevitable. Thebausffs always returns to a favorable wave state, getting himself fed with CS advantage. Aurelion can't even try to influence the rest of the map, since any attempt to roam would lead to massive tower damage and more free gold for Sion. A short absence already gets punished hard, and Aurelion's margin for error grows smaller and smaller. Despite being 0-5, Thebausffs is in complete control of the lane at this point. It is ridiculous. Aurelion's disadvantage is actually so bad here that he has to yield the tower at the first sight of Sion's teammates. The enemy mid laner is essentially just a huge walking bag of gold waiting to get collected, as he has zero agency and a massive shutdown on his head. You might assume that Aurelion would be a little bit safer near his tier 2 tower, but after finishing his first lethality item, Sion is basically an assassin. and you know what assassins do to immobile mage champions. The inevitable finally happened. Thebausffs has manipulated the bounty system, as he has been dying without losing any resources for it, only to now claim 800 gold for one kill. Sion is 1-5, but he is ridiculously far ahead of his lane opponent. However, this is where the fun just begins. Thebausffs, quite ironically, enters the mid-game with a massive lead due to his inting strategy. He is extremely tanky with high damage already, but look what he does to guarantee he snowballs even harder. He ulted the tower and claimed 3 extra platings. That's 525 free gold. Enemy champions can outplay you, but towers cannot, making this move super easy. Thebausffs heavily focuses on platings for this very reason. And normally, a tank with a lead is no big deal because tanks fall off. However, Thebausffs' Sion is not a tank, he is a killing machine. Dealing with Sion takes a lot of effort for the enemy team, but when they finally manage to do that, he just kills them right back in his passive. It's stupid. Thebausffs will keep split pushing in the mid game, as the free gold from minions is all he needs, while he also makes perfect use of Sion's unparalleled damage to towers. It's also a guaranteed advantage for his teammates, since the enemy would need multiple people to answer Sion's push. A single person is not going to cut it. If left unchecked like this, Sion will continue to take your towers. And kills don't win games, but towers do. Thebausffs will keep going until the enemy actually sends enough people to stop him, but even then his own team is just free to do whatever they want, while the enemy still needs to deal with Sion's passive. And the enemy has to find a solution to the perma-split push rather quickly, since the longer the game goes, the harder it will be to stop Sion. He is an infinitely scaling champion with legitimate one-shot potential. If left alone for even a second, he will take your towers. The enemy must answer immediately, or they will just passively lose the game. Even if Thebausffs misplays, the end result will oftentimes still be a 1-for-1 trade while still keeping up the pressure in the side lane. This is exactly how his inting strategy works. He ensures he gets his own resources right from the start to then checkmate the enemy with a split push in the late game. At some point, Thebausffs will be so strong that he can straight up ignore the enemy while stubbornly claiming tower after tower. His strategy completely defies the fundamental concepts of grouping and teamfighting, making it incredibly difficult and frustrating to play against. By the way, the example game I used for teaching you the strategy here is about to get really crazy. But instead of spoiling it for you, why don't you go and watch it with live commentary from Thebausffs himself? Just click the link on your screen right there.